Okay, in this video, let's install PHP Code Sniffer and the WordPress coding standards. If you just Google search for Code Sniffer or PHP Code Sniffer, you should find it. Let's click on the GitHub link. Scroll down a little bit to the installation portion. Now, if we're using Composer, we can install PHP Code Sniffer system-wide with this command. So just go ahead and copy that command. Now let's go into our PowerShell and paste it in. It's going to change our directory to our user directory, appdata/roaming/composer, and install it here. Great, so once that is installed, let's double check that we've got everything we need. Make sure you have the composer bin in your path. This is the default value, but we can change the value we need with this command. But we can check the value we need with this command. So let's check the value we need by running that command. Copy it, go to your PowerShell, paste it in. And this is the exact path that we need, so let's copy that. Now let's go back to our environment variables. Environment variables and the path, let's add something new. So now let's paste in that path and change these last two to backslashes. All right, let's just try this out. Let's close your old PowerShell and open a new one, and let's just try. PHP-CS-H. Let's try that. Look at that. Great. PHP Code Sniffer is working for us. Now let's try PHP-CS-I. This will give us information about the installed coding standards, and that's what we want to do. Oh, and so now what we want to do is we want to add the WordPress coding standards. So let's go ahead and Google search for the WordPress coding standards. You can see the GitHub one here. Let's install it as a standalone thing. Now there are a couple of options you could do here. One is that you could git clone this to your root directory, or you could just download the zip if you don't have Git installed on your computer. You could just unzip it to the same place you put PHP 7. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this git command, and I'm going to navigate to my root directory. Make sure I'm in the root directory C. There we go. I'm in the root directory. Yep, there's my PHP 7 folder. So I just want to paste the git command in here, and I'll change the folder name to capital WPCS. Now the reason this command works for me is because I've got Git installed on my computer. Again, if you don't have Git, either install Git first or run this in order to run this command, or just download the zip. Now let's list our files, make sure we've got it in there. Yep, it's right there. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to tell PHP Code Sniffer that the WordPress coding standards exist. And so we need to add its path to this PHP Code Sniffer configuration. So we need to tell Code Sniffer where to find those WordPress rules. Let's copy this command and paste it into our PowerShell. Then we need to modify the path to the position we put our WordPress coding standards, the folder. Since we're already in C, we can just type WPCS and then return. And we can see that the config value was added successfully. Now when we type PHP-CS-I, we should see that the WordPress coding standards are added to our configuration. Look at that. Okay, now let's make sure that Visual Studio Code knows about these changes. Go to Visual Studio Code and open your settings with Control-, Look at the extensions on the left. Make sure that you have a PHP code sniffer in there. If you don't have it, then you'll have to add it as an extension. So let's go to extensions, type in PHPCS. Install that one. Okay, now we can reload to activate this plugin. Let's reload. Great, now let's open our settings, Control comma, go to extensions, go down to PHP code sniffer. I want to unclick this, auto config search. Sometimes I have problems with that. This is the correct composer path. Let's go down a little bit more to the executable path box. Now, sometimes, like depending on where you install PHP code sniffer, sometimes my computer has trouble finding the executable file. It might not be in the full in the path. So you might have to type the full path, like your user directory / roaming / data. Sometimes that happens to me. But if it's in your path correctly, then it should just work fine. I think in this case, it should just work fine. So now let's modify the standard, the PHP code sniffer standard. This is the last thing we need to do. So we can copy this phpcs.standards over and just type WordPress into the right-hand side with quotation marks. Now let's save our settings. And let's see if this is going to work. Let's create a new file. We'll save it as a PHP file. Save it to our desktop as PHP. But now, I think in order for these settings to be recognized, actually it's a good idea to close Visual Studio Code and then reopen it. I had a bunch of errors popping up earlier without exiting and reopening the code editor, saying that PHPCS could not be found, the executable could not be found, the path was incorrect, and so on. So I just figured out I should completely close Visual Studio Code and then reopen it, and it seems to work for me now fine. So once the settings are configured and you close Visual Studio Code and reopen it, hopefully you see in the bottom, like I see here, PHPCS is linting one document. You can see it down there. Now it's 2 documents. Looks like as long as it's in our global path, we don't need any additional path in the executable settings there. So it looks like it's going to work now. Just make sure that you've got your PHP executable path in there. Auto config set to false, and the WordPress coding standard set, and you should be good to go. I'm starting to see some WordPress errors popping up here, so that's exactly what we want. Now again, if you have any issues with getting this set up, you might need to try adjusting your Visual Studio Code settings or the executable path to PHPCS, or make sure that all the executables are added to your environment variables and system path. Or you might just need to Google search some answers to your particular problem if you run into something that isn't covered here. I've got some videos showing how to set this up on Mac also, so you could check those out as well if you're having some trouble. You might find some more help there about how to solve your problems. But otherwise, I think we're ready to get on with the next video and start getting to work on our WordPress themes.